I was listening to the previous podcast where you were referring to the article in which virtual reality was compared to motion controls, like a Wiimote, in which it was people thought it was really cool. It definitely sold a lot. There was a bit of a craze for it, but then the novelty kind of wore off, and people on average would, as you mentioned, they just want to plunk down, drink a beer, and play a game, or they just want to play a game and they're like, I just wish this was a normal game. And of course, we've all had the waggle fatigue, where it's like a otherwise fine Nintendo game is suddenly destroyed or just made somewhat more annoying in certain elements by stuff like the accelerometer stuff on 3DS, or just like, I just want to play this. Why do I have to waggle the Wiimote? I've heard this argument before, and again, I'm, you know what? I'm going to state right out. I am definitely a VR fanboy. So I'm not enormously partial, but figure I would, basically express my opinion on this. I've been an original backer of the Oculus Rift, the DK1, which is the big old black one with the lower resolution screen, as well as the Oculus DK2, and thanks to the fantastically awesome move by Oculus, they're giving me a consumer one, which I hope to be able to try at the end of March or April or whenever I'll get it here as a Canadian. So my experiences with virtual reality is limited to Oculus's platform, as well as some old demos from way yonder, but I'm not even going to factor that in, and not factoring in my Virtual Boy, because that really isn't virtual reality. So I have not tried the HTC Vive, and I have not tried the PlayStation VR. The latter specifically is very limited as to who has been able to try it, although I did get some very interesting details from sources and contacts, as well as from sites like test.com and uploadvr.com, which are both great sites if you want to read up on how the VR things are shaping up. So I can only limit myself to the Oculus platform as to my direct experiences. But I guess the parallel with motion controls is a little different. Motion controls are targeted towards existing types of gameplay, the flat screen, the living room, the thing, and then add motion control to it, and then it made you more active. It was kind of DDR. It was the same with Kinect. It was, it's a video game. It could be an arcade machine, and you're just asking for additional physical interaction with it. Virtual reality is a little different. So again, in terms of some bona fides here, using my DK1 and DK2, I have literally demonstrated this thing to over probably 200 people at this point, as kind of the unpaid Oculus spokesperson. So few people in this neck of the woods have one of these machines, and everyone who knows about it really wants to try it. So I've been invited to the public library several times. I've been, let me just turn off my phone noise here. I've been invited to the public library a few times, brought it obviously to family, to some gamer events that were run locally here at a local game store. So a lot of people, I've had the pleasure of showing this platform to an awful lot of people. And these are not just anyone. I mean, there was a woman who must have at least been in her 80s, tried it at the public library, as well as, I generally put a hard cap at 6 years old. It's actually based on kind of a disproven fact, but you're not supposed to give stereoscopic vision stuff to kids under 6, so I haven't been. So, I mean, a whole group of audiences. And the one thing that's frustrating about VR, and probably its biggest challenge at all, like just more than anything else, even any of the technical challenges, in my opinion, is, well, besides motion, when we'll get to that in a minute, is you can't express really well what it is. it sounds cheesy to say that, but like the idea that, so actually here I will use an anecdote. A friend who tried the headset, who is savvy, and this is, I say a friend, almost everyone I've shown this headset to I've had to do this to as well, but this is just to give you an example that it even as someone who really thinks they know, they put the headset on and they'll stare at this. So the common response, they'll put the headset on, they'll just stare straight up. And they're like, whoa, this is cool. Because they see the stereoscopy, and it's cool. But you're not wearing a mask on your face just to get the effect you'd see if you went and paid the extra the extra $3 for those goofy glasses in the movie theater. So I generally, almost in every case, I've had to tell people, now turn your head. And they're like, they're wearing the glasses, and they go like, whoa! And it's that reaction that I love the most, number one, because it's always the whoa moment. Wah is the automatopoeia to apply to every single demo I've ever given of this tech. It's not that it's 3D. That's cool, and that happens. But it's that when you look to your left, there's a thing to your left. You look behind you, there's a thing behind you. And this isn't like Google Cardboard kind of does that too, but it's a little laggy. You move it and you use the phone things and kind of has it. This is so smooth and seamless. It is insane. And it fools you. You look to if you're in a cockpit and you look behind you, the cushion of your chair is here. And you look above you and there's a thing above you. And that's the impact. So it is a completely different medium. Ignore TV, ignore anything else. And this is why companies like Oculus have made a big point of saying that, that's why they didn't do the cheesy thing like trying to make a driver that would make old games work with it. You don't want old games to work with it. You don't want to adapt the gameplay. And this has kind of been undercut by some of the games that they've been showing off, unfortunately, but you don't want to make a game that is something you could play on a console, because there is disadvantages to wearing the headset. Pat brought it up, one, which is I want to reach for my beer, and you don't know where the beer is. You have to feel around for it, or take lift the headset up, and then you might get like forehead gunk on it or something. Like you are being asked to do an extra thing, which is to blind yourself to the world around you when you're playing this. So if you're asking someone to do that, you have to give them something for that disadvantage. And so if you're just playing a regular old game, there's no motivation, there's no reason for someone to do that. But if you're playing a game that was made with VR in mind, this is an experience you cannot experience in any other medium at all. Nothing except real life will convey scale as much as VR does, for example. There's a space demo, there's a really good demo called Titans of Space, made by this group. I'm guessing they must be, I feel bad, I didn't really look into if they were like a museum or a science foundation or something, but there's a really good demo. They've been around since the DK1. And they show space and stars in scale. And scale in a 2D screen, you have, how big is this micro SD card? You can only see that it's small because my fingers are next to it. You are comparing that this is a small thing because there's a big thing next to the small thing. Or sorry, there's a small thing that seems to make the small thing look smaller. It's contrasted or comparative scaling. But if you're wearing a headset, if you're in VR, something is big, you're craning your neck to look up. Like imagine Shadow of the Colossus, where you have to crane your neck up to see the top of the critter, the Colossus that's running towards you. Your body and your brain will immediately understand big. This is big. So there's, from an artistic and just medium direction, this is really terribly exciting what it can do. So as to the answer, so that's kind of an end run. I just wanted to give that as a context, that VR isn't just wearing goofy glasses and getting 3D depth, which is not anything fancy. it's immersing you in a new reality. That's what it's doing. It's a virtual reality, and it's something, unfortunately, and this is going to be their biggest challenge. Is it's really hard to convey unless you try it. And I really hope they put a lot of kiosks out, and I suspect that's part of the reason why they're giving like 7,000 of us Rifts when they come out, is so that we can kind of be the ambassadors, and like we've been, and just kind of, we're the enthusiasts, so let's show it to everyone so that everyone likes it. The other thing about, so the metaphor, the waggle stick metaphor with the Wiimotes and such is, instead of comparing this to the sit down in front of the TV gameplay that you would get with Call of Duty or retro games or platformers or anything, the sit down with a beer and drink on your couch and play a game, that type of gameplay. I have to apologize if my computer's making binging noises. Apparently I'm getting an awful lot of email. Sorry, that threw me off track for a minute. Instead of comparing it to that, which it really isn't, compare it more to the person who, I guess, without sounding elitist, because it really isn't, it's just a different way to play on a different platform. Some of the more hardcore PC gamers. Someone didn't just sit on a couch with a beer to play Dota or StarCraft or whatever. They kind of immerse themselves in it, and they sit down and they're, it's the dark room, whatever. So this isn't going to help the stereotype for the basement troll playing on their PC, but that's effectively what it's, at least its initial audience primarily is going to be. And I think Oculus and Valve were wise in targeting that first. PlayStation VR, while it's often heralded as potentially being the first to be the huge mass market in terms of sales, and we'll see. I mean, price-wise, we don't know how much that thing's going to cost yet. But it's cool that it's bringing it to a lower-cost platform. But I think that's where they might run into the issue you were talking about, which is the couch gaming. I don't remember where I heard this before, but there was a really good name for it. It was sit back versus lean forward gaming. So if you're sitting back, you're on a couch, yourself or with friends, alone or with a headset, and you're playing a game on the console on TV out in front of you, usually at a distance, and you've got the gamepad in hand. And lean forward gaming is your StarCraft runs, your Warcraft, World of Warcraft raids, the people who will sit down and lean forward and play the game, and they're not. It's just that difference. The lean back versus the lean back versus lean forward gaming is, I think, one of the best descriptions I've heard of it. So VR will be the lean forward crowd, and this poses challenges. It's great that they have the Facebook money, because this poses obvious challenges, because it's a significantly lower market share. There's no doubt if you can target everyone who has a PS4, you're going to have an awful lot more people capable of playing the platform than people who have a $1,200 to $1,300 gaming rig and a computer room dedicated to it. Like, it's just, on the kind of the opposite side, even though, again, I have no experience with HTC's platform directly, I've heard the room scale stuff is mind-blowingly awesome, but I'm not entirely sure we're ready for that yet, because that's the big, I'm not sure a lot of people will have the room to dedicate to that, although I can totally see it being fantastic for arcade type setups or museums and demonstration stuff. I think for the most part, because we lack the brain spike to get into the nervous system and figure out what a person really wants to do, I'll be the first to sign up for that, though, when they come out, is room scale or moving around VRs. I don't think it's quite ready for most prime times. But yeah, so now to address a few other things I heard on the podcast, Pat was not sure if the headset was heavy. It really isn't. It divorced the idea of the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy was heavy. The Rift DK2 is surprisingly light. It's about as heavy as a pair of really good swim goggles. It's not that heavy at all. They put a lot of of effort into making it lightweight, but still it presses on you and it's got this weird clumsy strap. The Rift Consumer, which is coming out, is supposedly super lightweight. I've not been able to play with this yet, but they said they cut even the weight from the DK2 significantly down. It's not even using a plastic casing, it's using some cloth thing so that it breathes like they kept using a ball cap metaphor during the original reveal. So that when you put it in, you don't sweat through, like, the air comes through, and as opposed to the big clunky one, which I think might be a bit of a Achilles heel for Valve's one, and wherein theirs appears to still be a big chunky plastic thing with a strap. I've heard the strap's a little better than it looks, but I don't know. Again, I've not tried it. And the Sony PlayStation VR one, at least I think that one flips up, which I really wish the rest of them did, but apparently that's more light in. Yeah, they're not heavy. It's surprisingly lightweight. And I figure a lot of this also comes in that people assume because the Rift, the revolution of the Rift and VR headsets that came after it, is that they made things cheap. Previously, VR was heavy and expensive because there were lenses everywhere, and then you had this very expensive display, which generally wasn't good. Where these things, the Rift is effectively one of these things in front of your eyes, a few inches, and it pre-warps so you could reduce the amount of lensing needed. So you just really need the two lenses in front of you to de-warp an image that the software is warping for you. But if you weigh a phone like the S6, I weigh it, it's heavy. There's weight to it. But the weight is the battery. You take the battery out and it's, paper light. It's insane what engineering has brought us in terms of these little units. So again, I feel the concern with the weight. I don't suspect there's going to be a concern with the weight. The DK2 is very bearable as is. I've had 20-minute, 30-minute gaming runs, and with no problems. I've had, even with this, which is, I've just mentioned, is heavy, I have the Gear VR, which is the thing that it snaps into, the Samsung Oculus thing. And even with this, I've been able to do Gear VR for, I watched their keynote on it, which ran very long. I suspect the weight is not going to be an issue, especially if what they're saying about the consumer one is it's much lighter, which is fantastic, even better. So now the other concern, can people game for 6 hours or whatever, which I just made the comparison to say a WoW Raider or a Dota, hardcore or whatever. Would someone play VR for 6 hours? Maybe. See, it's hard for me to comment because I like gaming. I've been, grew up between the Atari to now, and I've played games. I play a lot less of them now. I do a lot more building and stuff, but I do still play, especially retro style ones, and VR. But I haven't done a good 6 hour gaming session myself in a while. Would someone play VR for 6 hours? If they played normal games for 6 hours, if they played Dota for 6 hours, I could see it. But yeah, they might want to take a break every now and again. Is it uncomfortable when you take it off? It doesn't have... so here was another thing to address. The Virtual Boy, you take it off and and it just feels like someone microwaved your eyeballs. That was because the Virtual Boy were just red LED arrays and black. And red has a very low persistence. Your retinas are fine with red. It's why astronomers will use red gels on their flashlights and look through things so that it doesn't obstruct their night vision to look at the sky. So when you're playing on the Virtual Boy, you're looking into darkness for hours and hours, or whatever, like maybe not hours, for 10 minutes at least, until that little pause screen comes up and says you should take your headset off. And then you look out into the world, and what happens if someone blindfolds you for 10 minutes and you take it off? Your irises contract and your brain says, what exploded? The VR generally is lit unless you're playing into a dark game. So if you're playing a creepy horror game and it's dark, then yeah, if you come out into pure dark brightness, it's going to be like coming out of a closet. But it's like, it's not terribly uncomfortable. You're naturally evolved to do it fairly well. It's going to be mainly the sweating or heat, which again, apparently the consumer version does better. I will test when it comes in. But I think that's the major issue. But I don't know. It all depends on what kind of how much of a fun experience you're having. It'll, like most things, I suppose, depend on the game. It's like watching a movie. Some movies are 2 hours and a half long and it feels like it's finished in 15 minutes, and some of them are an hour long and it feels like you've been there since last Friday. So I guess that's kind of going to depend on the game more than anything else. I could easily see myself getting lost in some of these games. It is something I really wish you guys, if you guys were not across the continent, I would drive over and just let you try one of these, and they're just fantastic. Mind you, you're much closer to Silicon Valley than I am. You should be able to find one. But I say, I guess that's my answer to it. Don't count it out. It's not in bullet points. Don't count it out. It probably won't. It won't and shouldn't replace the couch lean back gaming sessions. It likely won't replace anything. It's a supplemental. It's another medium. It's a cool medium, and it's another medium, and it's fantastic, and I'm excited to see how it progresses. And it's, you know, is it heavy? No, currently it's not, and it will be less. And, you know, big hurdle right now is it's expensive, but it's new tech. And it looks like Facebook being able to absorb some of this as a kind of a loss is a really good thing, because it's going to let them, you know, absorb the fact that it's going to be a niche within a niche that can get these initially. So yeah, there's my answer. Again, love the podcast. I do not blame you for having any of these, what I believe and what my opinion is, misconceptions. Reasonable people can disagree, which I realize most social media forgets. And it really is hard to convey this. It really is hard to understand this unless you've tried it. It is such a thing that has to be experienced to appreciate. But I'll leave you with a comment. I think it might have been from the EVE Online guys, because they're making the back end for the Rift. I think it might have been from them or another studio. One of the people said, we haven't put this headset on someone without them saying some variant of, oh shit, this actually works. So I'll leave it with that. Keep up the great work. And it's fun watching you both every week. Cheers, and here's my first video reply ever.